Good afternoon again, and we welcome you. This is the Veterans Forum. It's a program coming to you here in the studios of Goffstown, New Hampshire. My name is Bob Stevens, and today is the 15th of December to the year 2014. The program is being put on in conjunction with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project, wherein they have asked stations such as this to make available to any and all veterans, male and female, who served in any of the wars from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and whatever else you had, if they can and will, come and share those experiences in a televised interview. This will be part of the recorded database in the Library of Congress is building up since the year 2000. Before I get started, though, I want to share something with you. I got this a couple of months ago. It's a little system wherein any veteran who has had 6 months or more of honorable service and honorably discharged can have access to any program if he simply dials 211. Maybe some of the friends or family have the same thought that he or she needs some help. Again, dial 211 anywhere in the state. It'll put you in touch. You can't read this, but this is a cadre of all the different services that would be available to you to help you overcome whatever your problem may be or give you some help. It's yours to have, it's yours to use. You've worked for it. Use it if you must. Now today we have another show, a young fellow who did a few things years and years ago. I'll ask Dave to introduce himself and then we'll take the show from there. Okay, if you will, sir. If you will, identify yourself, tell us your name, spell your last name for the record, and your current address, your years of service and dates of service.
Okay, I'm Alan Davis, D-A-V-I-S, and I live in Ware, New Hampshire, and I was in the Army. Well, I beg your pardon. I was born in Hurley Hospital in
No, you still all right. Go to the Army.
Hospital, and and lived in Sharon, Massachusetts through high school, and it was there when the war was on. I wanted to fly a B-17 so bad. I went in there, they gave me a color test. I was 80% colorblind, and so I didn't get in.
Okay. Whoa, you're jumping the gun. You're already 20 years on me.
Oh,
what was your branch of service in the years when you were in the service?
I was in the Army ground troops. It was an amphibious infantry division, and I went to Camp Blanding, Florida for infantry basic, and then to California to amphibious training at Camp San Luis Obispo, and we practiced landings on San Clemente Islands off San Diego. And from there, I was taken right over to the East Coast and put on a ship to go to Europe.
Okay, tilt. Again, you're jumping the gun.
Yeah.
Go back, if you will. We know where you are now and who you are.
Yeah.
But I want to get some history. Like, what was your life? Like, where and when were you born, and how was it growing up as a kid? Your family life.
Yeah. Do you want me to start over again on that?
No, just tell us what you were.
But anyways, when I was born, I was brought up in an 18-room house. My father was a manager for a plant that turned around and just shut down, and everybody in the plant went out. And a few years later, he lost the house to the bank. And so we struggled. And of course, the Depression was on in full force. And I remember after my two brothers were dead by the time I was 13, I had to go with my father and pick up groceries and clothes and things like that, things that got so bad. And
what do you mean, pick them up where, how?
Well, my father went down from several thousand a year down to, he got a job, but it was about $20 a week. And it paid for the rent and put food on the table. That was about it. and helped to do it. And
Okay.
then later, when the war was on, he got a job with the War Production Board, going around and getting the scrap out for the war effort. And as a kid growing up, I had normal kid accidents and everything else, and
Well,
more stitches and
For
stuff.
example, what was your schooling like? Were you a good student? Any sports, any activities?
I didn't go out for sports in school because I had to make my own money. I went through school well, and a tribute to my education in high school, I wanted to play. I played sports in college, but in high school, in grade school, I didn't get any allowance from my father, so I mowed lawns in the summer, shoveled snow. I had a Boston Herald paper route, and believe it or not, the paper cost 2 cents way back then.
Well, how much you could make on the paper? Penny?
About that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but.
So where did you live? You never told us where you were born and when you were born.
I was born in Hurley Hospital in Boston.
When?
Oh, January 16th, 1926.
Okay, now we can get us. Now we have a baseline.
Yeah,
Take us
okay.
from there.
And from there,
Do you have any brothers and sisters? You said two brothers.
I
but
had
you
two
haven't-
brothers. One was burnt to death in a brush fire before I was born, and the other one was killed in the 38 New England hurricane. So when I turned 13, I was an only child, but I always played around with kids from larger families and had a good time. But my childhood was good. My parents were very good to me, but like I say, I had to earn my own money. And all the way up to high school, when I had a dance coming up and I was taking a girl that I liked very much, my father, it blew my mind. He gave me a $5 bill, which was a
Wow.
lot of money back then. And he said, take Joanne out and show her a good time, get her a good meal. We went over to Norwood and had dinner, and we had to be home at 12 o'clock because the town had a curfew of 12
Did you have
o'clock.
wheels or borrowed your car? Or
He let me take his car.
wow, big night.
Yeah, and I mean, that put about about almost 20 miles on it. And back then, you only had 35 miles, gas enough to run a car 35 miles.
A sticker?
My father had, and I guess it was an excellent, he had unlimited gas.
Okay,
Because
C
he
sticker.
drove for the War Production Board, getting the
Okay.
scrap out of the outer graveyards for the war effort. And while I was in high school, I organized the entire school system. Back that time, Sharon was only 3,900 people, and it was mostly businessmen that worked in Boston or Providence because they're right on the New York to Haven and Hartford Railroad. And anyways, I worked, as I say, doing all that to make money, that I didn't go out for sports, as although I loved to play sports. I did play varsity baseball in college, and even some semi-pro baseball after at my senior year when I graduated.
Oh.
And but as I say, I was athletic minded, but I couldn't do it because I was too busy earning money. And also at that same time, when we organized the kids for the scrap effort, Paul Waite, who was a reporter for the Boston Traveler, started up the Junior Commandos at that time. And so I set up the whole town like it was like a regiment, and right down with battalions and companies and platoons
Whoa.
and so forth. So we covered the entire town. And that little town, believe it or not, got out more scrap than a lot of small cities. And my senior year, the town even put me on the town
Payroll?
didn't get paid, but on the town salvage committee.
Oh.
And while on that, the money was growing quite a bit. And everybody, one had their ideas what they would like to do with the money. Till finally somebody asked me what I thought. And I said, what I think is the kids have earned all this money, it should be sent on them. And Dr. Griffin had started a playground, the whole field was in, but there weren't toilets or a small grandstand or maybe a little office cubicle for keeping equipment and stuff. Didn't get that finished. And I think this money should go for that. All of a sudden I thought it was a great idea. So that's where all the money went, was into the playground.
Good.
And
Very good.
So
Now that was after high school?
that was in high school.
In high school,
In high
okay.
school.
When did you
And
graduate high school?
Sharon, Massachusetts,
In when?
in 1943.
Okay. The war is starting to sneak up on you.
Oh yeah, it's been going. I wanted to fly a B-17 so bad I could taste it. I went in, they gave me a color test, and I think that was an excuse to get rid of guys because I was 80% colorblind, so I didn't get in. If they needed only about 20% of the guys applying, I could have passed, gotten a yarn test
It's a
and
big
passed
if, though.
it. Yeah, so anyways, that's when I ended up in the infantry, but I
Oh,
mean
great.
the army, and they put me in.
Time. If you, where and when did you volunteer? When did you go in and how did you get in?
After I graduated high school,
Yeah.
that's when I couldn't get in the Air Corps, I volunteered
Okay,
for the Army.
1943.
But I wasn't 18. I graduated when I was 17.
Oh,
And
Dad have to sign for you?
no. In the Navy, that could be done. But in the Army, it's 18 period. They don't take them. So, but they did have a program that I could join the All-Safe, ASTP. We had an acronym for it, All Safe Till Peace, but it's the Army Specialized Training Program, and it sure didn't turn out to be that, our name for it. But anyways, they sent me to Howard University, and the second semester, I turned 18, and then I was right off to infantry basic in Blanding, Florida.
Now, when did you go in? What month, year, and so forth?
I think it was
Roughly.
June of
43, 44?
wait a minute, no, 44. It'd have to be June of 44 because I did a year at Ohio University.
Okay, all right.
And
And how was it when you first went in from civilian to GI family?
oh,
The
that was
first
a
couple of weeks in
change.
boot camp.
We had a Corporal Clevenger over us, and he was a great guy, and he knew his trade and everything else. But oh boy, I mean, you had to straighten up and fast.
You made you feel welcome, huh?
Oh yeah.
For example, what were some of the things you remember?
Well, one thing I can't say, how he woke us up in the morning at 5 o'clock and everything, but it was funny. And we got out, and of course we went through all kinds of things, digging foxholes and everything else. But I'll tell you one thing I remember about him. In bayonet training, and we had to take it, he would get us so mad, and he'd say, try and get me, try and get me. Oh, he didn't call us anything. And the guys got so, they really tried to take him out. But he couldn't. He knew how to handle a bayonet, I'll tell you.
Well, what was the exercise? So, you're telling us, but we don't know that. You tell the story.
Well, that's bayonet fighting.
Okay, but what did you do?
Well, we tried to get him. I mean, but you learn how to parry and go with your gun, with the bayonet on the end of it. And it's hard for me to remember everything that goes in that, but I know we went through a heck of a lot of that.
Oh, the parry, short thrust, long thrust. Did you have trouble hitting that long
they had
thrust?
thrusts and
you had a push.
parrying and everything else.
Yeah, dang right you did.
It's almost similar to a duel with swords, but you've got a bayonet.
Okay, now what do you have, a carbine or an 03?
We had M1s then.
Oh,
When I was in combat, I had a carbine. And none of us in an anti-tank gun squad had a rifle. We had carbines or pistols.
mm-hmm.
And so
Now where did you get your training? What camps were you at?
I was at
When you first went in, where'd you report?
I went to, oh God, camp in Stark, Florida. Oh God.
Okay.
We went out to California and we got amphibious training at Camp San Luis Obispo, and then we're down to Camp Callan for a while. When the last week, while we're practicing landings on San Clemente
Well,
Island.
what were the practice landings like? What did you have to do? Can you explain that so we
Oh,
know?
we were climbing down roads, getting into landing craft, or climbing and back up to get on a ship and so forth.
From a real ship or from just a dry land?
A real ship.
Okay.
And they had we're out in the water off the island of San Clemente.
Okay.
And getting into landing craft and going and so forth. And
Do you have any accidents or something that
no.
happened? Any guy ever slip and fall and splash, or some guy clowning around?
Nobody was clowning around, but occasionally you could slip
Yeah.
if you don't get into the rope right with enough of your foot.
Okay.
So.
Do you remember how you had your hands when you go down the rope ladder?
Oh, I always had them up above my head here, carrying
No,
them
not
going
that way.
down.
This way. You're holding
Not,
it.
well, you're up about here. You're
Yeah,
getting up
but
because
you're
you're
holding 'em
pulling
this
yourself
way.
up,
That's-
or you're letting yourself. You have them down here when
Yeah.
you're going down, but you're
Okay.
reaching up when
Because
you're
if you
going
reach
up.
like that, you're going to get stepped on. We're told never do that.
Yeah,
And we had a guy fall right out of the LVP.
yeah. Well, you can. It depends how far the guy was up on you,
Oh,
but
yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, you could grab it on the side because it was all just interlaced.
I know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you slip through in your foot and you straddle the damn thing
Yeah.
and you can't get up. The guy
Yeah.
coming down top of you.
It seems funny, but I've got to dig into my memory thinking about this.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to do because we've been down the same road.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
And,
let's San Clemente. Then where'd you go?
Then from there,
Texas?
they shipped me, went up north and across over to camp in by Taunton there, camp, I can't think.
Devons?
No, Devon's up
Miles
north.
Standish?
Yeah, Miles Standish.
Okay, that's down the Cape, yeah.
Yeah. No, wait a minute, that's my Cape. Now this one here, what the hell's the name of that camp? It's been so long, but anyways, then we went by troop trains and got on ships to head to Europe.
Okay.
And the ship we got on, believe it or not, was the supply ship for the German pocket battleship Graf Spee that scuttled itself off Montevideo. And when we got out into Boston Harbor, I never saw so many ships, and they assembled us with the troop ships in the middle, surrounded by cargo ships, and then a lot of warships.
Okay, let's stop right there. We want to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll continue, so we know where and when you went to Europe.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That'll be a break for a few minutes, folks. Now that we're back, you're ready to go overseas. Tell us how you managed to get aboard, where you went, and so forth, and the conditions on the convoy going over.
Well, the funny thing is, we boarded the ship at the Army base in Boston at the pier, and The funny thing is, my folks knew when I got on that ship. I don't know who in town knew me and saw me because I didn't see anybody I knew. And they told my folks that I had just shipped out of there that day. And that was, nobody was supposed to know anything about any of
loose
us.
lips, loose ships.
Yeah, amen.
Now, how's the trip going over?
The ship was fine. I have never gotten seasick, never, but other guys have. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, anyways, no, the ship ride over was very good.
How was the food going over?
And the food was fine. I'm not hard to please. I was happy with what I got.
Okay, a lot of guys weren't, but that's...
Oh, I realize that. And maybe I didn't have as cultured a living as some of those guys had growing up in the Depression. Gosh, but...
How's your bunks?
They were comfortable. I can sleep on about anything. When I will go to sleep, I go to sleep.
Okay, how high were they?
Well,
5, 6, 8 high?
oh, higher than that. The ship coming back from Europe was 13 bunks high. And I'll tell you, coming back, this stunt, a guy was sergeant that was up on top, and he had his shoes off, and he had his foot hanging right down by my face with his smelly stocking foot. I tapped it a couple times to get him to please move his foot up on the bunk. And he didn't listen to me, just left it there. So I took that foot and pushed it up into the thing, and he went right out of the bed and down. He caught himself on bunks across because there wasn't too
much
wide
room
an
between,
aisle. Caught himself and got down. He didn't get hurt, but he was coming up raring for me.
With a bayonet?
No bayonet, but he was coming up after me, and I was ready, but I lucked out because there were some blacks that were having a poker game from when we started to come back till we got back. And I loved to watch them. They were funny, cracking jokes, and I joked with them and everything else. Well, they saw him coming up after me. 2 of them came over and grabbed him and told him, "Don't you touch him. He's a friend of ours. You go right up to your bunk."
Okay.
He did. He stayed the hell out of it.
Time again. Let's go back now. You went from going overseas to coming back. I want to know, what did you do when you got over? Where'd you go? Where did you land? And what was your body like?
We landed at Le Havre, and we went up to Camp Old Gold. And that was where a strange thing happened, because I and another guy had a pass, and we went to the town of Dudesville, about 10 miles east of the camp. And I had to go, went to the latrine to go, and who was in the next stall next to me? My buddy from my hometown.
Oh.
And ran into him. I didn't know where the heck he was. But I know he was in basic 2 months ahead of me, and he went into the paratroops and went to Benning. And if you can wash yourself out after 4 jumps, but on your 5th jump, if you make it, you're in the paratroops. Well, on his 5th jump, when he opened his chute, it ripped his shoulder apart. So he was out of the paratroops.
He was out.
And he was in the hospital for a while. When I was taking amphibious training in California, he was at the Fort Ord Hospital, and I couldn't get a pass to get up and see him because we were so busy and they were rushing us through. And so I never got to see him again till I'm out in the Philippines and met him at Clark Field. But anyways, we went on from there, and we went into battle right after the Battle of the Bulge. We replaced the 82nd Airborne at Cologne, and we're supposed to jump the river, and we were ready to do it when Patton crossed the Remagen, we captured the Remagen Bridge. And I don't know whether we went over that before it collapsed, because we were in covered trucks, and crossed an Engineers Bridge. I don't know. And but while up there in Cologne, we had our line cut with the headquarters, And I and another guy were told to trace the line, and we were in a V in the Cologne City Hall where the two roads went down to a bridge that was out. And we crossed this road, and all the buildings were just a sea of brick, mainly. And when we got on this side, we're inching down the road. He's running in, and then I'm running, then he's running, till we got down to the next street, and the lines went in.
Hey, you were on foot all the way?
On foot all the way. And we kept our line knowing, and we got down there, and there were many lines going down that road, and all of them had 10 feet cut out. A patrol had come across the river that night and cut them off. So we cut 12 feet out of somebody's line and spliced it into ours. We kept testing till we got our headquarters, and then we spliced the line to that.
Okay.
And then we came back. But a funny thing, while we're there, a woman is down there. What the hell she's doing in that area? But walking by, she sees us walking up to us, and she says, laughing with me, folks. Get the hell out of here. This is no time for that. But she went, but we got back. But the strange thing, when we got across that street, and I'm in my first, what's left of a building, a doorway, standing there while waiting for him to make his move, there was an ungodly odor there. And right down between my feet was the head of a dead German.
Oh.
Just the top of his head showing, and needless to say, very dead. But he had decayed quite a bit, and that was not a good sight. But that was the last one we saw in there. Although in our building, on the far corner of the building, there was a man over there dead, where cats had eaten an arm off up to the elbow, and the opposite leg off up to the knee, because they were hungry. Nobody lived within a few blocks of the river. Mm. It was a combat zone. So
were you under fire all the time while you're doing this?
At night, not too much. It was pretty quiet until we were getting orders to jump the river. But this street on the right, particularly, was red with tracer fire from across the river, hoping to catch somebody walking across at night or moving around. But there wasn't much thrown back and forth. We set up the gun, and they did a lousy job of it. I was inside the hall there, but they had the gun with one trail up against a curb, and the other one was on flat tar. When they fired that gun, that's a hell of a powerful gun, the 80.
What size were they, 105s?
57 millimeters.
57
They're
okay.
105s and 155s are your artillery. This was strictly an anti-tank gun, and there was a sniper in a tower across the river, and they took a shot at that to knock it out. And
get them?
I guess, hope so. We didn't go across the river there, so we don't know.
Okay.
But the thing is, the recoil from that gun, that thing can jump up. You dig the trails in, and you get them down and cover them over. You even put a log on it, because it'll slide back 2 or 3 feet. Well, these guys didn't have this trail covered. It's out in the road. This is a heavy steel trail that's on that. Mm-hmm. It bent the trail almost that bad.
Wow.
So I don't know whether we got a new gun or they replaced the trail. I don't know. Probably replaced the trail. And we moved onward with the same gun, but I assume it was the same gun.
How far did you get into Germany?
Well, they took us and we cut the Ruhr Pocket in two from the south at Hagen on the Ruhr River. And we suffered our first casualties at Halchenbach in the Ruhr, where 3 of our own dead were not in our squad, but riflemen on a street corner. And that's an eye-opener. And we had a gun position in a cemetery overlooking the little village there for protection of the riflemen. And they had 28 Germans lined up with civilians digging holes to bury them. And they were still hauling them up the road in those wooden carts they have with their feet, with their boots dragging on the ground, coming up there. I don't know how many total were there. And when a few years ago my son said if you got to Paris and he'd pay for everything else, he wanted to retrace my steps. But being a grunt, you don't know every place you went. You weren't privy to the maps. But I did know where we went into the Ruhr, into Helchenbach, and I wanted to find that cemetery. I couldn't find it because it has something like 4 centers
Did
spread
you go
way
back
over.
after the war?
It went after the war.
Okay.
Yeah, my son wanted to retrace some of my steps, but we didn't go way down to Ingolstadt where we suffered our heaviest casualties, and that's when I got knocked out for 24 hours by a shell that landed close to me. And
Did you spend any time in a hospital?
I don't know, because I didn't know this had happened to me for 40 years, believe it or not. A friend that lived next to us up there in northwest Wisconsin talked me into joining the VFW, of which I'm a life member. And at a meeting there, monthly meeting, afterwards we go upstairs, have a beer or two, and tell our stories. I'm there at the table and the guys are telling their stories, and finally came around to me and they said yours. And I started to tell this story of what happened at Ingolstadt. Was I emptied the truck out, and our gun truck is used either to haul supplies or ammunition, whatever, and troops. I was told to load it up with ammunition and explosives, and the other half was communications equipment. But I got across that river, and I'm on in the middle of it when 2 88s landed on either side of me, 15 to 25 feet apart. But because they explode slightly delayed, went under the water, so we didn't get any shrapnel, and they were only 15, 25 feet away. I got across the river as fast as I could, but you can't speed on those things, and went down to the right and stopped, and we bailed out of the truck. And that's the last I knew. I don't know where we took it, how we got back, and where I even slept that night.
Did you get a Purple Heart for that, you know?
When I told him that I'd been sent back to Cologne the last week of the war on R&R, my aunt told my mother, he's been wounded. And my mother sent me a letter, anxious letter, and I wrote back to her and I said, no, I have no wounds, I have no Purple Heart. But they sent me back to Cologne on R&R. And but 40 years later, when I found out, I went to the VA. What did they come back and tell me? They said all medical records between A and E or F have been destroyed in a fire in St. Louis. And they're supposed to have those in 2 different places. I think this was a BS story just to get rid of me. Because if the government's doing the right thing, there's records like that someplace else.
It should be.
Yeah, I'd like to see a congressman and hear what the heck he can do for me.
Okay.
But believe it or not, 5 years after that, I realized why I was driving that truck across there. Because the guy with me was a really skilled driver and a hell of a nice guy and a good man. He sure cussed me out when I didn't help him get free from the truck when we crossed.
Over the wheel,
yeah,
spare tire.
but if I got picked off by a sniper over there, the sergeant had his most skilled driver in the truck to take care of it. I was expendable.
Oh, sure.
I don't like the idea, but it's only good military thinking. So, but that was an eye-opener to me because that surprised me. So anyway.
Now, was that your last combat?
That was my last combat.
Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to lead up to, that was your last combat in Europe.
Yeah.
Then tell us what happened, where you were redeployed.
Yeah, we took us right out of there. We assembled at Mannheim, and we had an overnight stop about 20 miles from Paris before going to Le Havre. And the sergeant came around, and Lieutenant Gracie, our platoon leader, came around and said there'll be 2 passes to Paris, and got to be on the truck in 10 minutes. Well, every sergeant and corporal throughout took the passes.
No.
I went to that lieutenant, and I never disrespectful to a lieutenant, always obeyed any directions and everything else. And I went and asked him, are there any more passes? And he says, no. Why, Davis, didn't you get one? I said, you know damn well every sergeant and corporal has taken those passes. And that's when I got a little slip. I told him, if I don't get a pass, I'm going anywhere. I'm going AWOL. I've come this far, I'm going to see Paris. Well, a few minutes later, there was an announcement. Another truck's going to Paris. Those that are washed up, be on it in
Good luck.
Just 10 minutes and go. Well, I took out my canteen, my helmet, poured the canteen water in there, brushed up the face, rubbed it all off, put my helmet back on, the canteen back on, and I was on that truck in a flash. I never got punished for that. I should have been punished because that was disrespect for an officer. And
But he knew damn well better than that, though.
yeah, you would think
No.
that, yeah. So, but that's the only time I had another time in the Pacific where I was ready to go after an officer.
Tell us how you got there.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we get on the next day. We got to Le Havre and we got on the ship. And the funny thing was, they took the ship and took it into Portsmouth in England. And the reason was they didn't take on any water in France because the harbor hadn't been dredged
yeah.
in the whole war. So they were worried they'd be on bottom. So they took us there, we filled up with water, and then came out and went to the cab. We didn't get any passes or anything, they just stayed long enough to load the tanks. And we're going out of, and I'm telling you, when I got out on the canal, going out to where it opens into the open ocean in south of there, the current was something. I came damn close to being seasick for the first time. You learn when you're on a ship to breathe with the waves.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother you. But you couldn't breathe with the damn waves the way it was going. And I almost got seasick. But we came on Boston, got short furloughs, and then we were rushed right out of the Oakland Army base and put on ships. And we were on our way to the Pacific. And that was a good trip out there, but we're in the middle of the Pacific when VJ Day was declared. So that was one happy ship. And as I say, if it had been loaded with liquor, they would have drunk that ship dry.
I wonder why.
Yeah, nobody talked about it, but I know I thought, and truthfully, and why I've named the book here, if we went into Japan, the Japanese soldier, I talked to some prisoners of war at the end of this trip out when the war ended. I was in the Philippines for 9 months, and I talked to some. The mindset of the Japanese soldier at that time was nothing was too good than to die for the emperor.
Yeah.
They would have been suicidal. They lost practically the whole kamikaze fleet in battling for Okinawa. Anyways, Japan surrendered when after the second atom bomb. The first bomb didn't do it, but the second one, they were thinking about it. But if we had another one, I'm sure it would have been Tokyo. And they didn't want that to happen, and they capitulated.
Okay.
So I ended up out in the Philippines for 9 months, waiting for points enough for discharge.
And when you did get discharged and come home, did you take advantage of the GI Bill?
Yeah,
Anything like
I
that?
got 4 years of college. I couldn't get any place back east, every place you went. And my father graduated from Tufts College with honors and was a football letterman. and he couldn't get me in there. A lot of alums were pretty mad. They gave a test that only takes so many, but the alums were upset about that, and the caliber of the guys going. I came close, but I didn't make it.
Okay.
And so every place you went, they'd tell you, sorry, we're filled up 46, 47, 47, 48. Would you like to enroll for 48, 49? I said, if I wait that long, I probably never will go.
Right.
And one night, I'm home in the den, and my folks are playing bridge with a couple they're friends with, and their son came in the house. He's 2 years younger than me, and he was going to college out in Nebraska Wesleyan. And he said, Al, where are you going to college? And I told him the story. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. And he says, why don't you come out to Nebraska with me? I said, what? Where the hell out there? And anyways, the bridge train broke up for a moment. Mrs. Noyes came in and said, yeah, why don't you go out with Bob? She was a graduate of Wesleyan and a native Nebraskan, and met her husband during World War I.
Wow.
And she said, yeah, why don't you? So I thought about, okay. I got letters of recommendation from the minister, the superintendent of the schools, the
all the
principal,
good paperwork. Yeah.
all of them, police chief, transcript of grades of my grades, and I mailed it to Wesleyan. And you know what? Within the week, I had my letter of acceptance, no exams, no nothing.
Wow.
That was, I was flattened with that. So I figured I'd go out there 1 year and transfer back when you have the big freshman dropout. But I liked it so much in Lincoln, Nebraska, I stayed and graduated after the full 4 years.
Now, what's your graduate? What's your degree?
BA degree with 25-hour business major and a 16-hour mathematics minor. But I had a choice of an engineering degree or a divisional major in the sciences, which was 40 hours, which I had 42 hours actually in the
So
sciences.
you're overqualified for that too.
Yeah, so that's why GE hired me. They like my statistics.
Yeah. Well, good enough.
Yeah. So
Now, how long were you with GE?
I was in Lind for 2 years, and the man that interviewed me there, and I got hired fairly quickly, but when talking was honest with him. I said, you know, I've been on several interviews, but I'm being honest with everybody. I bring something up, and I can feel the conversation going cold. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'm in the Army Reserve. And the guy looked at me and said, I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. And if you go on 2 weeks summer camp, GE will make up your difference in salary from military to your pay you're getting here. That's what GE did for us then. And I don't know what their plan is now or anything. And so I got called in about a week or two. So
you started where? West Lind, wasn't it?
West Lind Works. And I worked with the meter and instrument department. And the meter department transferred to Somersworth, so I was transferred to Somersworth and was there for another 13 years when I went with a missile and space outfit, and then laid off a year and a half later because they weren't getting the major government subcontractors, which they depended on.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So I went around to other things, and I did a lot of circulation work for papers, just getting them set up to get out of the mail and get the home delivery, and was circulation manager in a couple of places, and had a good living. But then I'm out married to my last wife, and we had a nice place up in Wisconsin. We're comfortable. I had a place on the Apple River, and we went to Arizona for a month or two in the wintertime when the wife, the last year and a half, I was like a full-time care person for her.
Oh.
And her daughters were after me to get her into a hospital or a nursing home or something. And I had to agree that we picked Oak Ridge Manor in Hastings, Minnesota, and I can't say enough for it. They have a hospital, a nursing home, and a assisted living memory care unit here, all tied together. You go in the door, and it's a big open area, closed,
Yeah.
but open area where you can go into each one. Plus, the hospital has a main entrance over here, too. And she was in memory care for a year, and then had to go into the memory care. Oh, that was Oak Ridge Manor. This is the hospital. She was in memory care.
Anyway,
Anyways, there and in the nursing home for 7 years, and because what made me make the choice was one time I'm in the bedroom doing something, and I come out down the hallway to the doorway to the den where she was doing something in the kitchen, came to there, and then all of a sudden, there, not a word or anything, she hauled off and gave me a slap on the left side of my face, which stung, but it didn't hurt me. And I was dying to say, thanks, I needed that,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to get her any madder. And she went out to the kitchen, but then I thought, I could be in bed and get a knife in me or something.
Whoops.
That began to scare me. So I had to agree with the daughters, and we put her in
care. Yeah.
into the nursing home. And
So that after she passed, you came back here to live?
after she passed, I was out there for a while, but I did come back here,
Okay.
yes.
Do you have
And
any family here? Or are you all alone?
No, I have a son up in Albany, New Hampshire. He and his wife are co-directors of the World Fellowship Center up there, and that's quite a place. And I have a daughter now living up on Crotched Mountain, has a room up there where she, when she works, she takes care of brain-damaged kids there. That. So they're here. I have a son. I hate to say it, but he's smarter than his old man. He has 2 masters and a PhD. He's in Turkey working for Care International out of Atlanta, and their job, what they do is try to get these countries self-sufficient so we're not pouring money down a rat
Amen.
hole. He just came up there this last year from being in charge of the island of Madagascar for about 3 years. So he, I would say, is on the second tier below the head of Care International.
I guess we're going to have to call it and pull the plug, but I have just 3 words for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend,
Oh, you're
for your
welcome.
service and your
I
saving with
appreciate
us.
it. Thank you.
Amen. That's a wrap, folks. Again, I remind you, 211. It's there for you to use if you need it. More important, if any of you feel that you'd like to come and do an interview here with us, the address is on the back. We'll do all we can to make sure that your story is well taken care of. The bottom line, though, if you don't tell your story, nobody else will, then we've lost all that history. Bob Stevens saying thank you for listening. Stay healthy.